The early Stoics anchored their entire system in hard physical reality, bypassing the abstract debates of their contemporaries. The school takes its name from this exact location, the Stoa Poikile, or painted porch, in the ancient Athenian agora. Here, around 300 BCE, Zeno of Citium established a philosophical system built exclusively on a corporeal foundation. Zeno asserted that only bodies exist. He argued good existence requires the capacity to act or be acted upon, a property belonging strictly to physical matter. To classify reality, the Stoics defined the supreme genus as something, or T in Greek. Every single thing that can be thought of falls under this universal overarching category. Within this category, they distinguished physical bodies from four specific incorporeals: time, place, void, and lecta, the underlying meanings expressed by language. These four items subsist alongside physical reality, without possessing mass or existence. For the Stoics, how a rational agent ought to live is strictly dictated by the material mechanics of the cosmos. The Stoics observed that the universe is comprised of two distinct physical principles. The first is the passive principle, or primary matter, eternal, formless, and completely inert. To give this matter shape, they identified an active principle, often called the Logos or Zeus, which serves as the rational, designing force of the universe. These principles are blended through and through, occupying the exact same space to constitute every single object in existence. The active principle travels throughout the cosmos through a corporeal vehicle called Pneuma, which translates literally to fiery breath. Pneuma functions through simultaneous inward and outward motion. This constant dual movement creates tensility, the physical tension that gives individual bodies their specific properties and cohesion. The cosmos features different gradations of this fiery breath, ranging from a basic tenor that holds stones together to the highly rarefied concentration of pneuma that forms the human soul. The Stoic cosmos functions as a singular biological organism, saturated entirely by a divine, rational physical principle. Because the Logos is rational and permeates everything, the universe operates on strict causal determinism. The Stoics defined fate as the everlasting, inviolable ordering of causes directed by this physical God. This unbreakable chain of cause and effect leads to the lazy argument. If every future outcome is predetermined by fate, why should a human bother to take any action? Chrysippus of Soli, the third head of the Stoic school, resolved this tension through a rigorous logical framework. Chrysippus argued that certain events in the causal chain are inseparable. He called these co-fated events, making human effort a necessary component of the deterministic timeline. He used a medical example to illustrate the point. A patient's recovery from an illness is fated, but that recovery is inextricably co-fated with the act of calling a doctor. The doctor will not arrive if she is not called, and the patient will not heal if the doctor does not arrive. The future outcome is heavily fated, but it is fated to occur precisely through the specific actions and choices of the human agent. Stoic psychology locates the rational soul inside the hegemonikon, or commanding faculty, a physical, centralized cluster of pneuma responsible for cognition. This physical soul receives data from the external world by forming fantasia, or impressions. These are literal physical alterations made upon the soul by external stimuli. This animated model illustrates the highest standard of cognitive data, the cataleptic impression. It is a mental representation that maps to its real-world source with absolute precision.
Receiving an impression is a strictly passive event. The environment forces the data onto the senses, entirely outside of the agent's control. The cognitive process shifts from passive to active through the faculty of sankatathesis, or assent, the power of the rational soul to judge an impression and either accept it as true or reject it. Human responsibility begins at the exact moment of assent, the point where the mind actively judges the incoming data of the senses. Chrysippus used a specific analogy to prove moral responsibility within a deterministic universe. He distinguished between proximate causes and primary causes. Here, a cylinder and a cone receive an identical external force. That push is the proximate cause. Neither moves without it. But the primary cause of how they move is their geometry. The cylinder rolls straight, the cone spins sideways. Their nature determines their behavior. Chrysippus mapped these solids to distinct human psychological profiles. The physical push represents the external impression, a stimulus dictated by fate. When two different people encounter the exact same stressful event, the external impression is identical, but their behavioral response is caused entirely by their internal character and their capacity to grant or withhold assent. We are morally responsible for our actions because our internal nature is the decisive, primary cause in the chain of events. With the physical and logical mechanisms established, the Stoics defined their ethical framework. They maintained that virtue, the perfection of human reason, is the only thing that is inherently beneficial. Vice is the only actual harm. Everything else in the universe falls into the category of indifference. These are the external conditions dictated by the logos, ranging from severe illness to immense wealth. This vertical scale illustrates the strict Stoic value hierarchy. Virtue and vice occupy the extreme poles, with the indifference occupying a massive central block. The Stoics divided this central block into preferred indifference, like health and education, and dispreferred indifference, like sickness and poverty. Preferred indifference possess practical planning value. However, moral flourishing, or eudaimonia, results exclusively from the practice of virtue, regardless of whether an agent is healthy or sick. Because external events are strictly categorized as indifference, a fated catastrophe, like a financial collapse or a physical injury, cannot actually harm the rational agent's internal character. The ultimate goal of this system is to produce the Stoic sage, a person who has achieved apatheia, the rational realignment of the passions into a state of total equanimity. To the Stoic, negative passions like fear and craving are cognitive errors. They occur when the ruling faculty incorrectly assents to the idea that an indifferent external event is inherently good or evil. The sage replaces these errors with eupatheiai, or healthy passions based on rational assent, such as rational caution and a profound delight in virtuous action. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius stands as one of the clearest historical exemplars of this rigorous psychological discipline, managing his assent while governing an empire. This is the final reality of the Stoic framework. The fated external world will inevitably crash against the individual. The wave represents the deterministic physics of the cosmos, delivering impressions and external events. The stone cliff is the perfected hegemonikon, the commanding faculty standing in judgment. By mastering the internal physics of the soul, the sage controls the only mechanism that matters, their own assent. They remain immovable, extracting virtue from whatever the material universe provides.